So y'all, I'm going to discuss in this video my experience reading this freaking novel, which was not all that good, I gotta be honest. So this is Midnight's Children by Salman Rushdie, and Lord did I struggle through this piece. I'm going to start off and talk about some of the things that I struggled with and that I didn't like about the piece, and then I'm going to transition into the things that I did like about it, because I actually would like for people to pick this up. As much as I struggled with it, as much as this mug almost put me into a reading slump, and as much as I kind of wanted to throw it against the wall a couple of times, I do think that there is something rewarding in this novel. The negative of Midnight's Children. This took me forever to read. Forever. It is 500 plus pages. I think it's 533 pages. And I felt well, maybe not every 500 pages. I think I felt every like 300 pages. I think after I got the first part of the book, I did really well. I liked it. It moved smoothly for me. But like about 200 pages in, I was like kind of over it. Kind of over certain aspects. And the biggest reason for that is because of the way that it's written. So the setup for this novel is that the narrator, Salim Sinai, is writing this novel to tell the story of his birth. He was born at midnight at the same time that India gained its independence. So he's kind of talking about the connection. And because of that, he believes that he and all other children born around this same time have this connection to India and its history and all of the things that happen to it after this moment, that their lives are like connected to these moments, and they have in the moments of his personal life has direct or indirect influences on the things that happen historically to India from independence on. And that's the setup of the novel. And so as he's writing this story, he has a huge tendency to talk entirely too much and to go off on tangents and to repeat himself and to just be unnecessarily verbose. And that in itself is not, for me, was not a problem. I didn't mind that he went off on tangents, because oftentimes when he went off on tangents, the stories that he was telling, like he'll say it was like important to this. So like instead of telling me directly the story of how his mom and dad got together, he'll give me all of this various different background information that he feels like I need to know before we get straight into the story. And I actually oftentimes agree with him, or at least if I didn't agree with him, I enjoyed the stories that he told enough that I didn't mind so much that he was telling them. My issue, I think, was how he constantly drew attention to the fact that he was doing so. He would announce, I'm going on a tangent now. He would announce, I know you want me to get straight to the point, but I'm going to go this way instead of going that way. And the more he announced it, I feel like the more I got annoyed with it. Eventually, I found myself, he will say, yeah, I know, reader, you wish that I would just get to the point. And I was thinking to myself, you know what? You're right, Salim. I wish you would just get to the point. And I probably wouldn't have gotten to that point if he had just said what he wanted to say instead of trying to like constantly explain himself. There's a couple of chapters in here where the first couple of pages are literally like recaps of things that have happened beforehand. Kind of like whenever we reach a turning point in the story where we've reached a big change, he will recap for us all of the events that led up to this big change. And I'm like, I don't need that. You ain't gotta do that. I'm good. I have a good memory. I remember what happened before, and I remember the significance of it, and I understand how it led to this. So I don't really need you to recap those things for me. So I was kind of torn between the two. On one hand, I disliked the verboseness of the novel and how wordy it was, and sometimes I did wish that the narrator would just get to the point. But at the same time, like, I could see intentions. I could see how it works, especially when I ask myself the question of why the narrator is writing this story. The idea that he's trying to get this history and get the story down right means that he might feel, it makes me think about when I tell stories. And you say a whole lot, and then sometimes you have to backtrack. Like if I was telling a story off the top of my head right now, which I'm kind of doing this review, so like you kind of sometimes have to backtrack to remind you start off and you think you're going in one direction, and you realize, wait, no, I actually meant to go this way, so let me go back this way and let you know what this is so you can understand how we got to here. Like, it's the way we kind of naturally tell stories is kind of how he wrote this story. And like I said, since it's intentional, there's a part of me that is annoyed by it, but also kind of impressed. So there's that. Another reason why this book was very, I think, hard for me to read, or kind of difficult, is because I do not know anything about Indian history. Like, I know a little bit more now that I've read this, but before I read it, I knew like nothing. And I feel like Rushdie kind of writes this novel as if his reader knows a lot of the historical events and a lot of the historical moments that he's talking about. So he'll drop names and he'll drop dates and he'll drop event names of things, and I don't know what he's talking about. Because he has this such roundabout way of describing things. It works when he's talking about his personal life, when he's kind of being when he isn't just direct about what happened in his personal life, and he's kind of giving you all of these like unnecessary details, or he's being very poetic or vague about things that happened then. Like, it works in that context, but it doesn't really work when he's doing it when he's talking about the historical events. When he's talking about the historical moments, I'm like, just tell me what happened. You don't have to really like wax poetic about it. Like, just tell me what happened so I can make so I can make the connection. I've read books that reference the histories of like countries that I don't know anything about, but usually the narrator does a good job of unfolding the important details of it so I don't feel lost. But there were lots of times when I was reading this where I just felt like I got lost in all of the historical details and all of the historical knowledge that I was lacking. So that was another reason why I struggled with this. And then the last reason why I struggled with this is I freaking hate the narrator in this book. I hate this guy. He is so, like, arrogant, I think is the word. And I know that there's a reason, but there's a reason for it. Because he's essentially performing for us, the reader. And, like, in the context of the piece, he's writing this piece down, and then he's also reading the piece as he goes to his partner, Padma, and who's like his romantic love interest. And so he's sort of writing the piece and talking to her and talking to the reader. And so he's always kind of performing for us, and he's always trying to put on this sort of bigger than life personality, and it feels false to me. It felt false. It didn't feel real, and I kept getting really just annoyed by him. Like, I was just bothered by him. I found him arrogant. I found him selfish at times. Like, I don't know. I just didn't really care that much about him throughout the piece. And it became particularly problematic because, like, the last maybe 200 or so pages is all about him. Before that, though, it's about his family. The narrative starts with him talking about his grandparents and how they came to meet. And then he talks about how his parents met, and then he talks about his birth, and then he goes from there, from his birth on to till he's like 31 years old. And I love, now we're kind of his family. So we're kind of transitioning to the things I love about this piece. I love his family. In fact, I love almost all of the supporting characters in this piece. Almost every person who he encounters in this piece, he does a very good job of characterizing them, of talking about who they are and their significance. Even like really minor characters sort of stand out to me. They all create this really rich environment, this very rich community of people, and I loved them. I thought that they were fantastic. I just couldn't stand him. So it's really interesting to think about that. I couldn't stand the narrator, but everybody else, they were great. I loved them. And I think it's partially, again, and then the reason why I think I want to encourage you guys to read this is because so many of the things that I'm complaining about are intentional. Rushdie is doing a lot of those things on purpose. I think he wants Salim to be a character who is distant from us, a character who we can't quite completely sympathize with, because he doesn't really want us to. I mean, one of the big issues, I mean, when I asked the question of like why this narrator is writing this story, it seems to be that he wants to give his life meaning. Someone who is struggling with that, someone who has spent all their time struggling to find purpose and to find who they are and what they're supposed to be in the world, might have a hard time talking about themselves and describing themselves and putting themselves out there. Or they would do it, but they would do it in a way that makes themselves seem grander than they are. There's a grandiosity. I think that's how you pronounce that word. It's one of those words that I've read on print but never actually have to say out loud. Grandiosity, I think it is, in the way that he describes himself. And it gets annoying after a while. But again, I think it's intentional. I think it's supposed to be a part of his character trait. It's supposed to sort of highlight his self-esteem issues. So it's like, it's hard for me to say whether or not you should read this. I gave it 3.5 stars because I can't discount the fact that a large part of my experience of reading this was not enjoyable. Like, I just can't discount that. But there was a lot of it that I did enjoy too. So, yep, that's A Midnight Children by Salman Rushdie.